Welcome to the Business Addicts Podcast. Today I have David Belman here with me, and we met a couple of years ago when he was starting a networking group that was really powerful and impactful to me on the journey that I was on, and really appreciated hearing his story about being in family business. And so I would love to share it with all of you today. David, if you don't mind giving us a little bit of background and just jumping right in, that's where we go.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for having me on, Jamie. Appreciate it. And yeah, I am serial entrepreneur myself, and grew up in a family business. So I always tell the story. People ask, how did I get involved? I'm a home builder, land developer, and realtor by trade. And my story is I literally grew up in the home building business because it was in the basement of our house. And so as a little kid, the conversations at the dinner table were around home building and customers and contractors. And so that just became part of my vernacular early on. But, I really got started into the building business. I would say my key moment was probably when I was about 9 years old. And I always like to tell this story. It's kind of a funny little story, and maybe doesn't reflect as well on me, but it was a learning moment. So anyway, it was a Saturday morning, and 9 years old, I'm bored. I want to play with dad. He's sitting at the kitchen table. He's got his feet up on the table, and he's reading the newspaper. And I come walking in the room, and I had to get his attention. So I said, "Dad, I'm bored." Expletiveless. I won't say the word. But it wasn't a good word. But I got his attention. He folded up the newspaper. Said, "Okay, come with me." Um, and we go to the garage. He grabs his coat, and we go in the truck. I'm like, "Sweet, we're gonna go get ice cream or something." I don't know. I didn't know what we were gonna do. And we're driving down the road, and you can turn left or right. Left kind of goes into town, and right goes to not really anywhere. And we turned right. Oh boy, here we go. And if you ever been in the car with my dad, like if you were anywhere near a job site that he had, we always had to like veer off and check the job. So I was like, "Oh, here we go. We're checking the job." But it was different. He's like, "Okay, get out." I was like, "Okay." And he goes around the back of the truck, and he pulls out a broom and a shovel, and he hands it to me and goes, "Start at the top and work your way to the bottom. I'll be back in 2 hours." And he left me there. And he's like, "Clean out the house." So, I grew up in an era, there was no cell phones or anything like that. This is a house in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing else around it. And it's like, okay, I guess I'm cleaning a house out right now. And that's what he did. And I cleaned the house out. And of course, at the end of the day, when he came back and got me, he gave me a check, which was kind of cool when you're 9 years old to get a check. I learned a lot. I learned the value of hard work. I learned the value of a dollar. And I learned, don't ever tell my dad I'm bored.
David, I am over here smiling so big because we grew up in parallel ways. I did not get a check at the end of the day for some of the work, but the rest of it, I literally grew up with a home building, real estate development type family. I mean, we were riding our Hot Wheels on a gravel road, and I thought it was super fun. And then come to find out, we were buying the development. Like, I didn't know, I didn't care. I was just looking for somewhere to ride Hot Wheels. And, when mom would meet with the customers in the house, I was the one to bring them water. And so as I got older and she was meeting with clients and she was asking them, where do you want your electrical? I remember thinking, I'm never building a house. Like, this sounds horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
it's just awesome.
There was weird things, being at home. It was always the customers were supposed to come in. We had a walkout basement, so I was supposed to come in, the basement. And I remember once or twice we had some person mad about something, and they walked right up to the front door on a Saturday at 2:00 in the afternoon or whatever. And I'm just a kid answering the door, and they want to talk to your dad. And it's like, yeah, don't so I learned, like, don't let this person in or whatever. I was like, oh boy. So there wasn't that boundary between home and work early on until I think it was 1994 when we built our own building and kind of moved out of the basement, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, it was always weird. And sometimes I'd be home alone and there'd be somebody coming in and out of the basement. And I'd sometimes go down there and it's kind of weird, like people just walking in and out of your house. So yeah, I didn't always know those boundaries as a kid. And that was one of the weird things with the family business.
Yeah, literally the timeline sounds almost exactly the same too, because my parents were, it was close to 94 that they would have built their office. and
That's
the
crazy.
it finally moved out of the house. Yeah, I mean, I grew up and all of the dinner table conversations, I mean, I usually, ate extra long so that I could be a part of them for as long as possible, and then I actually cleaned up the kitchen so that I could hear them. And I absolutely was left on the job site with a broom. My sister and I made up songs to entertain ourselves because, we're super duper sweepers.
Yep. Yeah, and
Like,
I learned like early, like I don't really like doing this, so I don't
yeah,
want to do this the rest of my life. So,
right, right.
I did it, and there's other times I remember he left me at a job site and I was cleaning up the yard and I stepped on a board with a nail on it. And
Mm,
again, in the middle of nowhere, there's nobody around. Again,
no cell
no
phone.
cell phones, and my foot's bleeding and I'm kind of limping around. I'm like, well, I just finished the job, and this is
Yeah.
like, hey, Dad, look, comes back, and it's just like I couldn't imagine doing that now to my kid,
That's what I was just
but
gonna ask. Does your daughter have the same experience growing up?
no, I've been a little more kind. But yeah, she is actually working for me on occasion. So she's in high school. So actually, starting this semester, she's coming in twice a week for about 3 to 4 hours. She gets early release. So she's doing more marketing and computer stuff. So
Mm,
um, I don't know that, yeah, she would take too well to me just throwing her on a job site. I mean, it was very good character building, but
yeah.
um, yeah, I think she's definitely more of an intellectual uh, early on, so we're gonna lean into that. And I don't want to scare her away from the business, but it makes it a little harder. You can't treat them with kid gloves, but sometimes
Right.
you want to make sure that she has expressed an interest in working for me and potentially doing stuff with the company in the future. So trying to ease her in and have a little different experience than what I had.
So let's be realistic here a little bit. At what age does a business really become a multi-generational business? Like, how old are the kids when that business starts to become multi-generational? And at what age is that entrepreneurial, um, whatever we call it, running in the DNA? Like, we're
Yeah.
literally born into it. I mean, I was riding in a pickup truck plowing snow with my dad when I was 2. Okay, I wasn't doing the plowing. I'm
Yep.
sure I was part of the problem. But actually, that's just the earliest I remember it. I probably grew up literally on the job site. I mean, my
Yep.
parents actually said that when they put me down on the floor in the house that they were building, they liked it that I didn't pick up the nails. Like, so I must have been crawling. Like,
Yep. Yeah, I think it's probably different for everybody, but I definitely think once I look back at that 9, 10-year-old age, and that's kind of when I got interested in the industry because I got exposed to it. And sometimes it's just all you know. And I think with my daughter, it was similar. It might have been more like around 11, um, 11 or 12, but like we had a weird experience too because of COVID. They basically shut schools down and had to do all online classes. And I felt bad for her because I'm like, she's stuck at home all day looking at a computer screen. And so what I did for her was I said, hey, one day a week, I'm going to come get you. And, I checked on her, at lunchtime and stuff to make sure she was doing what she's supposed to. But I'm like, hey, we're going to go. And I had a subdivision we were starting. So she went out to, first saw this as a farmland and we saw the farmhouse and then we tore the farmhouse down. She got to go back and see that. So I take her once a week to the subdivision. And it was really cool, especially over the summer. Took her out there and she saw, the road grading equipment and the backhoes and front end loaders and the dump trucks and everything. And I took her out there just not knowing what she would think. And all of a sudden she's pulling out her phone and taking all these pictures. And then she's like, Dad, can we come back again next week? I want to see what it looks like next week. I was like, oh, she's kind of hooked on this now. And so that I think kind of triggered her. So sometimes you don't realize at first what is going to get their excitement or get their attention. She's been in my office before that, and I think she just sees people at desks, and that's kind of boring. But then to see an actual house go up. And then the other thing that was interesting as well is that so my father died a couple of years ago. It was right before COVID, actually. And then my mom wanted to build a house, so I'm building a house for my mom. And I took her out to my mom's house that we're building, and so she got to see that, see the hole in the ground and see the framing. And then I had her help sweep out the house, so she did get that experience. Um, and then get to see grandma's house now all done. And so I think that was really neat for her to see, like, this is literally what dad does. It's not just sitting behind a desk and talking on the phone all day. We're actually making something. We're making, transforming land and subdivisions. And I think that definitely got her much more interested.
Yeah, I didn't realize growing up that other kids didn't know what their parents did for a living. Like we were so engaged. I would see my mom sitting at the dining room table working on plans after supper, and just trying to fit that closet in just right. And and we grew up. I literally grew up laying block with dad. I mean, when you talk about being left on a job site for 2 hours, my experience was actually being left in a bulldozer and being
Wow.
told to push the dirt towards the house, and I was probably 14. And I'll tell you, I should not have been left in a bulldozer. Now, I was careful enough that I probably just got nothing done. I literally moved
Yep. Yeah.
dirt
Pushing
for
a
two
little
hours,
couple
but
pieces
it
of
was,
dirt. Yep.
it was not much.
Well,
But
times were different
yeah,
then. It was like people didn't care as much, and we weren't treated with kid gloves as much. It
no.
was like, hey, figure it out. And I remember too, as I was getting my driver's license, my dad, we were out at one of the
Mhm.
subdivisions, and I didn't have my license yet, and he's like, here, take the keys, drive the truck around the empty dirt roads, and get
Yeah.
comfortable driving. And I did. And he's like, come back in like 15 minutes, and I'm driving around an empty road. I'm like, well, there's nothing I was going to hit other than dirt. So, um, yeah, that's just weird. Like, I don't think people would do that these days.
I'm going to date myself. My dad left me probably 9 o'clock at night on a school night in a Kmart parking lot and said, plow, and I'll be back.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was 14. But that
That's
was back in the
crazy.
day when Kmart was around.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But again,
Haven't seen
the
one of those in a
Kmart
while.
wasn't open, like there was really nothing for me to do except for wait for him to come back. So I might as well start plowing,
But you got
figure
a
it
real
out.
skill out of it too. It's like, okay, now
Absolutely.
you know how to drive a truck with a plow. And
If I need to drop
um,
the plow, I can.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's like, again, a lot of kids these days don't get those physical skills. They
It's tough, David.
Mhm.
I want my kids. I have 6 boys. I want them to have access to these opportunities. And when I was a part of and connected to my dad's business, they did have a lot of those opportunities, but at the same time what I started to realize is that they weren't always wanting the same opportunities, and to get opportunities for today in today's environment, I don't know how to help them as much. Like the digital online space, YouTubing, software, gaming.
Yeah.
I'm
There's
like,
just so much that they can get into and they get distracted by. And,
yeah,
some of them, do really good with that and they turn it into a business. And the problem is there's so many kids that they all want to be YouTubers and influencers. And, there's only so much,
yeah,
bandwidth out there. And what the kids don't see is they see the final product. They're like, oh, look at this is fun. But they don't see like most of the ones that are really successful, they're literally streaming almost all day. They have a team behind them that are editing it
yes,
and they're spending a ton of money on this on top of it. And kids don't always see that. And so, there's just such an opportunity to get involved in, especially the building industry and the trades right now.
yeah,
And you can make a real living. You now can fix your own things. There's always opportunity for side jobs. And there's just less and less people getting into that. So that means there's more and more opportunity. And these trades are getting paid really, really well.
yeah.
And they can make a huge living. And again, you can have, like philosophical conversation about should you go to college or just get into work. And, for a lot of kids that don't enjoy the college experience, they don't enjoy the classroom, that just like to be busy and work with their hands, they should get into trades right away. They're going to make a ton of money. They're going to have no debt and they're going to do really well and they're going to love what they do.
So we've talked a little bit about our past and how much they align. What I'd love to dig into, David, is a little bit more on how you were able to transition the business, because this is something that not very many people are able to do successfully.
Yeah, that's always a hard part. And again, with being a family business, I'll preface it that my dad started the company. My mom was involved with it for many years, and then she kind of pulled herself out. And then I had a brother involved with the business as well, and his older brother. So he had been in it, for several years before for me. And for example, my brother is 11 years older than I am, so there's a pretty big age difference. His path is a little different in that, he actually wanted to be an electrician growing up, and he was kind of denied that opportunity because they knew we had a building business. They said, well, why be an electrician when you can work in this family business? And it was really competitive back then. So I don't think he ever got to do what he really wanted to do in life. So he was in the family business and early on worked really hard and then got to a point in his life where I don't think he loved the business and it was very difficult. So the way we planned on transitioning the business initially and how it got transitioned were kind of different. So the original plan was my brother and I were going to start our own building company. And then the idea was to phase down my father's company and then sort of phase up the company my brother and I had. So he had a company called Belman Homes, and we just created Belman Homes to try and be a little bit more just general, that way it'd be more timeless. And so it was like 1999. My brother and I started the business, and started working on it and stuff. And then this went on for about 15 years, and got to the point though where about halfway through the partnership that I had with my brother, he and I had different working. I don't know how to explain it other than to say different motivations about work. And so I was, there daily and doing all the main things, and he started showing up kind of at 10:30 in the morning, and would pop in for a little bit, then go out to lunch for an hour, and then come back for a little bit, and then disappear. And it got to the point where there was that, and so he lost a lot of the respect and the trust from the staff. And then the other thing that started to get more difficult is I was elevated as the leader, basically. And my father also started to, at that point, he moved down to Arizona part-time, so he was only there for half the year. So I was basically sort of running the show. But then my brother would come in and be like, wanted to be in charge, sort of. So he would just come in and start barking out a few orders, and then he'd leave, and the staff would then come back to me and be like, "Hey, your brother said this. Should we do that? It doesn't seem right. Should we do this?" And I'm like, "No, we never do this." So it started to like undermine, and it was just getting difficult. And it was hard for me as well because we were equal partners, but not equal in the work. And so I put up with it because I'm like, it's for the greater good. It's family business. And I did that for a long time. And then what happened was it just got to the point where I was like, I don't even want to go to work in my own office anymore. I don't like coming here. I'm stressed out. There's too much drama. And, I'm like, I know how to do all this. Like, why do I keep putting up with this? And so, um, I had to make the difficult decision to basically do something about it. And so, first talked to my dad about it before anything, and he was like, I know what's going on. I can see it. Like, and he's like, I want you to know that I support you, but I don't want to get in the middle of it. I was like, okay, so what does that mean exactly? He's like, well, you do what you need to, what you have to do. And so I'm like, well, I need to get him out of the business, Dad. I mean, this was also during a time, if I can preface this by saying this was right around 2011. So we're just coming out of one of the really bad housing recessions from 2007 to kind of lasted even into 2012. And I was looking at going, I'm starting to, get more involved with ownership of this business. Times are tough. He's drawing a huge salary, not really participating as much in the business. His business isn't going to survive if I don't do something about it. And I cared about all the people in my company. They're like my family. And I also care that, if I'm going to put in all this work, that I want something that's going to be there and it's going to last. And so I knew if I didn't do something about it, there wasn't going to be anything to have in the future. And so, I had to do kind of the double whammy of kind of firing my brother and then having to go back and buy him out of the company. And then also make peace with my parents about it. And so it was very awkward. It was difficult. Wasn't easy at first. And yeah, I mean, I got sort of attacked a bit from his wife, and she didn't understand it. And I just knew at that point, like, whatever I do, I have to do it the best way I can, and I have to show everybody that this was the right decision for the company. And so I was really focused inwardly on doing everything right, being a good leader, and learning as much as I can and growing. And I mean, it was great for me because it was really transformative, and that I pushed myself to levels I never got to before. But at the same time, I was, I had a lot to prove, and I think I did that. But wasn't easy. I was called some bad things, but I was just trying to do the right thing at the end of the day, and I always tried to do it in a way that showed that I was doing the right thing by the business. And I'll say this to wrap up the thought. You can ask whatever you want, but the evidence showed, like, I mean, after we got that finished and completed, like, our sales went up. We started getting these really huge positive reviews. We won all sorts of awards, and all these really great things started to happen. So it was like you had to kind of remove that bad situation from the company. And I love my brother. We're getting along good now, but it was difficult, and you don't ever want to say anything bad about him. I mean, he's one of the kind of people where you meet him and he's just a fun guy, and he's really like, people really like him, but it's just like he just wasn't cut out to run a business.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing that vulnerable portion of what it's like because um, we see business owners and their families tied in and they don't know how to navigate that transition. And what you said about becoming a better leader and really pouring into that is what I'd like to see more of, but we don't necessarily realize that we need that, like we don't know where to get it. I mean, I just remember not not feeling like I had any other resources, trying to Google it, and
Yeah.
now being fully connected in to where the resources are and what types of resources I need. I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah, and we had the one thing that helped me, and I don't know if I would have ever gotten through this without it, but I had a business coach that I was working with, and initially my brother and I were both meeting with them, and then it became apparent as we were trying to raise the bar on the company. A lot of things were happening at the same time, so it's hard to just tell the story really quickly. But basically, we were trying to elevate the company, and so we were building in a vision, a mission, and culture. We are doing a lot more goal setting. We're just doing a lot of the really big picture stuff that we probably should have been doing many years ago. We just didn't know.
I didn't know.
So the coach was helping us with this, but it became apparent to him as well as we're going through this. Like, David, you're doing all this stuff. Like, every time we'd meet, my brother wouldn't come back with anything. He wouldn't be doing anything, and it's like, okay, does he even care? And I was like, it just was apparent he just wasn't buying into it, and then it became apparent to the team as well. But I had that person there that I could talk to and strategize through this a bit, and he got to see it firsthand, and it was invaluable to me. So anybody that has a business, whether you're going through this or you're just needing help, it's always good to have a coach or somebody that can take another set of eyes on your business, kind of help you see your blind spots, and then also just help you work through it. And there was times where it was like, I think he would have pulled the plug if it was him, a year earlier, but I had to go through it my way in my process, and he helped me through that, and you know, we just did it in steps. So this is what we need to get done first. This is what we need to do next, and I made sure that I had a backup plan if it didn't work, because that's what I needed to do to feel comfortable to make that decision.
Yeah. So I want to go back a little bit. You mentioned that you were in partnership and part owner, and that is something that is a little bit of a difference that I've noticed in the ones that are able to transition. It's because someone, the other family member, has part ownership. And there's a lot of family businesses where the parents don't ever figure out how to transition and they don't have to. And so they end up like self destructing
Yep.
technically because they would rather do that than start turning over a percentage of ownership to kids they don't think are ready. And I'm not sure if you've seen that, but I think that's
Oh
a
yeah.
powerful part of what you
No,
had going on.
I mean, kind of struggled that with my dad too, because even though I was kind of running things, he never wanted to like sell anything of the business, or
Mhm.
and he was 81. He never stopped working.
Thank you for because that's I'm normalizing this.
Yes.
So retirement does not happen for entrepreneurs from my perspective. If it does, it's 84, not 62. Like let's just normalize
Yep.
this.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, he just loved the business, right? So I mean,
Exactly.
he didn't want to really get out of it, but his way of getting out was, okay, I'm going to go down to Arizona for 4 months,
Yeah.
every winter, and that's great. And we supported him on it, and I was able to run everything. But it would always be like, okay, the week before he came back, it's like, okay, let's make sure this is, we had to kind of, and there's certain things where, I was moving everything more to digital and online. We have a web-based platform for job management, all that kind of stuff. My dad didn't even use a computer.
Right.
So
Right.
like, then we'd have to like, okay, let's go make some paper. So he had his thing, because he just didn't do it.
Yeah.
So we like had to almost have two different ways of doing business. It was like, here's how we're doing it when he's not around, and then here's what we need to do when he's back. And not that we did anything nefarious. It was just he
Mhm.
just liked to do things his way. And so, and he would call and check in once in a while, but he definitely, stepped back that way. But I would remember approaching him about certain things like, hey, this piece of land, I want to get going on this. I want to start developing it. But I mean, I don't want to put all
Mhm.
this time and effort into it if I'm not going to, benefit from it. And so it's like, can I buy this from you? And then, no, 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 that's part of your inheritance. You'll get that someday.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
well, we don't have enough lots to build homes on. So I'm
Right.
like, if I don't start on this project, we don't have anything. And he
Mhm.
wouldn't give me an answer on it. So I went out and bought another piece of land um, instead because I'm like, I'm not going to be able to stay in business if I don't have property. So, those were, he never really like gave me the plan or this is how I'm envisioning this. And
Mhm.
so that was frustrating. And then after he passed, it was challenging because then it was like, okay, now I got to, meet with all the lawyers and get things out of the family trust. And then I was like, okay, now I have to go back, and my mom's like, I don't want any of this. But,
Mhm.
I had my brother again. So I'm like, I bought my brother out of the business. And then like 4 years later or 5 years later, now I have to work with him again and buy the land out of the trust. And I'm like, all I felt like I was doing, and as I'm still for another year or two,
Yeah.
every year I'm writing my brother a check. And I'm
Yeah.
like, this is crazy. I just feel like all I'm doing is working and then giving someone else my money. And I'm near the end, but it will work out in the future because now I have all the assets, and every time I sell and build something, so like these years are kind of like what I call the lean years, and then in a
Mhm.
couple years, everything that I sell is going to be just assets that I've accumulated. But it's been challenging because it's like, yeah, that's I'm land rich and cash poor, but it just
Mhm.
because it wasn't really planned out the way that I would have envisioned it, and had I known the plan differently, I could have worked at it differently and maybe made it a little easier on myself right now.
That's funny. I have to ask, do you happen to know some of your personalities? Like, do you know your Myers-Briggs? And if you do, don't tell me. I want to guess.
Um, well, I know disc, so yeah.
Okay. Well, the Myers-Briggs one, you sound a lot like me because the ENTJ personality, when we're under stress, the way that I sound is it's fine. It's fine. I can operate without a plan. If you would have told me there's not a plan, then I could have planned on there not being a plan.
Yep, yep. Yep. No, I like to know what's going on. I definitely have that in me for sure. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would agree with that.
So, um, you mentioned about your dad not really knowing, what to do. And I think that's one of the things that I've started to also normalize in conversation is recognizing that the older generation doesn't know. And that the next generation, it really is their place to start to realize and start to really want and desire something to the point where they can go and ask for it. And what you did in that work, it sounds like, is got clear on that because a lot of kids don't do that work. And so then they can't go to their parents and specifically say, this is what I want. Now, again, he said no when it came to building the lots, but at least you got to the point where you knew what you wanted and you knew what you needed enough to ask. Because when we wait for our parents to do that for it, they don't.
Yeah.
They're waiting
And
for
I mean,
us.
I totally get that. And I'm like, okay, I'm 47 now. And, I've got a 16-year-old daughter. She's definitely not ready or capable or anything. And it's like, okay, let's start having the conversation of, is this something you want to do? I don't expect an answer from her right now. She might be going to college and all those kind of things. So I look at it as I've got another decade here that I need to run the company and do all the things. But somewhere in that decade, maybe in the next 5 years, we got to start having the conversation. Is this a business that you want to get into? Is this something you're serious about? And the answer can be either one, right? If
Hmm.
it's not, that's an okay answer. If it is, that's an acceptable answer as well. But then we have to figure out, okay, which direction do we go? And I'd like to have hopefully a better situation here where if she does say yes, this is a
Hmm.
business I want to be involved with. Okay, how do we start to you know get you everything you need so that you're in a position to start to take things over, and I can start to phase back and those kind of things. And if it's not that answer, then it's okay. All right, now I have to work on finding someone that eventually will want to get involved with it and that I sell it to. And so you know I don't have that answer right now, and
Hmm.
that's again okay. But I want to have those conversations earlier rather than all of a sudden I'm looking at myself in the mirror as an 80-year-old still working every day, going, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah. And I do think that what I'm seeing is that around 59 and a half, all of a sudden the business owners, it's like they kind of make it through the tough part, like where you're maybe at right now, where you're seeing, okay, I'm not sure if I want to be working here for the rest of my life. And then all of a sudden you get past whatever this next 10 years look like. And you're like, you know what? I'm not done yet. I'm not ready to be done. I'm not washed up. I can still, like, this is actually working well because I don't have to work every day.
Yeah.
And so we see this 59 and a half, all of a sudden, the relationship between the parents and the kids totally changes. where they thought they were going to want to hand it off, and they started talking about that, and then they don't. And so I think the question that I would like to ask the next generation, or the, those that are in that 58 to 62, 65, something like that, is who are you needing to become? Because it's time for you to grow. It's time for you to make space for the next generation, even if it's still within the company you're in.
Yeah.
Like, you became a leader the last time there was this next level of growth, right? Like, what's next?
Yeah, I think that's important to have that conversation and carve out their niche in that place, and I can totally see that happening because even just like we had a blizzard the other day, and it's like, okay, I was home for like 4 days in a row, 2 were off and then 2 with the weather, and I was like, okay, by day 3, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of getting like, my wife's like, yeah, I wish you were out of here right now, like.
Yeah.
I have to be doing stuff. I have to be
Mhm.
productive. And so I can see that as I get older that I might still have that perspective as well.
You've been a
And
creative, you've been a creator, you've been a visionary, you've led people. And so now to just turn around and say, well, I guess I'm going to watch something for a little bit. Like, that's not who you are. I mean,
yeah,
what
it's
are some
uncomfortable.
what are some of the crazy cool things that you've gotten to do in the last couple of years that you honestly probably never believed you would have done?
Oh, that's been a lot. I've been really fortunate. Part of my growth is I've given back a lot to the Builders Association, and so I've been asked to lead that. And so I've been president of the local Builders Association. And then I was, I think, one of the first ones that ever went right from my local Builders Association to becoming president of the State Builders Association the following year. And then I also became on the board for the National Builders Association. When I was state president, I had the opportunity, I actually got to lead a meeting with the Speaker of the House. And I was literally in a room with like 10 people in the Speaker House, and they kind of warned me. They're like, he just likes to talk, and so like we need to get these things discussed. So they're like, you got to take control of the meeting. So like I walked in there right away, and I'm like, this is the third most powerful person in the country right now, and I got to tell him what's up. And it was like I told a joke and kind of caught him off guard. And I said, oh, hey, this is the stuff we need to talk about. We got these 6 things. And also he was just like, oh, okay, well, what's your list? And then I was like, literally just like that, I'm like, I'm running a meeting with the Speaker of the House. Holy crap. So that was a really cool thing. And then the other kind of neat stuff that I've been able to do is, one of the things that's important to me with the business was, um, I had this sort of exercise about building your legacy, and that really was transformative to me. That I I wanted to build more than just a company. I wanted to build something long lasting, and so we got involved with this organization called Operation Finally Home, and it's where we find a wounded veteran, and we give them a brand new mortgage free home, completely free of charge. And so that's not something you take lightly. Like, give a free home away to somebody, that's a huge commitment, and it's a lot of work. But it was something I wanted to do, and so when you have a business, and you get to a point, where you get it sustainable, it gives you the ability and the flexibility to do whatever you want in your life. And so that gave me the ability to be able to give back and give a home to a veteran. So it was such a great experience that we did it 6 more times, and we're going to do a 7th one. So it's now turned into this whole other thing that I do besides just building homes.
You have purpose in addition to, and really leaning into, what is the legacy that you want to create, and who are you as a person? I mean, you've written a book, you've started a
Yep.
podcast, and those things don't necessarily make your business better overnight, but they change who you are as a person, right? And how you show up.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, again, all this kind of stemmed from going through that very difficult situation with my brother. And I had to elevate myself and elevate who I was. And so a lot of that was introspective work that then became outward within the business. But the other thing is that when you kind of go through that process, yeah, you start to look at, I was 40 at the time or whatever, and it's like, okay, if my life ended today, would I be happy with it? And I didn't like that answer. I wanted people to think more, and more of me, and things like that. And I said, I've got to start making bigger choices or bigger decisions, and do more with my life. And so that's kind of where I got involved with that. And I just happened to find something that was meaningful to me, and great people. And I also needed something positive during that time. because it was a very difficult time. Again, my mom called me a robot, which wasn't, I didn't really like hearing that, but it was like, would a robot give homes away to wounded veterans and spend all this time doing it? No. So I think there was some like, hey, I got to prove myself kind of thing. But that really pushed me to be better, and then it pushed me into helping others and build that legacy. And then so part of that's in my book, Leadership Growth Hacks is the name of the book. And the book is really designed for like younger people that want to grow their leadership, and a lot of things that I put to use to make myself better were written in that book, techniques and different things. Um, and then yeah, the podcast is um, forces me to constantly be better because mine's all about home building. So it's called the Home Building Hero, and we talk about anything and everything related to home building. And so I'm talking industry news, I'm talking trends. So that forces me every day to kind of be on top of this stuff and be the thought leader. And so I'm constantly looking for different pieces of trends or shifts or new things coming out and being able to talk about that on the podcast. And it's supposed to be a consumer podcast when I started, but it's actually also heavily listened to by the industry because people are finding a lot of value in that, and it's helping them with their business or helping them understand what's going on in the industry as well. So it kind of all comes together. And yeah, I don't necessarily make sales off my podcast and never tried to. My podcast makes me a better leader and a better owner, though.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, it's just little things like that that we don't know until we step into trying something new. And as business owners, we're often trying something new. Like you said, maybe buying new land or going into a new space for development. And so I think we feel like we're stumbling around in the dark a lot, and it doesn't necessarily feel like there's a correct way to get the A, the way that we might have thought in school. Like, could you tell
Yep.
me what the assignment is again? Because I'm really thinking I'm getting it. And I think for myself, I thought that in the real world, the assignment was to get to be financially stable, in addition to maybe a couple things like getting married, having kids, and having a car. It was like, well, we maybe judge ourselves based on the financial report card, but the reality is there's a whole lot more to life, wealth, rich, success, like all those words and what they mean. What do you think about with that in mind?
No, it's totally true. And the success is only what you define it as. So everybody's definition of success should be different and can be. And so for some, it's yeah, maybe it's just okay, I want to own my house and have a car, and that's fine, and that's good for them. And others want to give back or whatever it is. Maybe they want to travel more. Um, I think as the title of this is Business Addicts. I think unfortunately I addicted it. In my business, I work a lot. I'm not happy to say this, but like last year, I didn't take a vacation, and like that shouldn't happen. Like you start a business, so you have some flexibility. We had some situations happen. I had a staff member that she got married, had a honeymoon, had a baby, maternity leave, like all this happened in the same year. And so she was out a lot. So I had to keep filling in for her. And then I had another staff member that had serious health issues that had to step out for a while. So I kept like jumping back in to different parts of the business. And so like this year I'm vowing, nope, we're taking 2 full vacations this year. I'm making up for the one that I didn't take last year, taking another one. But yes, that's the dark side of sometimes having a business is that, yeah, I mean, you're sort of the last line of defense. So, if somebody leaves or something happens, you got to be able to fill in. And a lot of people don't understand that, especially if they worked a 9 to 5 job. They don't understand that, hey, the phone rings on the weekend, you got to answer it, or you get an email, or you got a problem, or you got to drop what you're doing once in a while. Especially in real estate, like someone wants to see a house, they want to buy a house. Guess what? You want to make the sale, you got to break your plan sometimes and go do it, right?
Yeah, there's so much more to dig into here, and especially because um, I like to create systems and sustainable businesses. And yet, like we've done that even with our house and our family. Like we've created this life that we're so comfortable in that we don't even need to take a vacation from it. And I think, in so many ways, that sounds good. But yet, what I'm also realizing is that we're made for challenges. We're made for, survival in some ways. And so when we get to that point where we're coasting, what is that really saying? What is the next challenge that we're ready to take on?
Oh yeah, it's easy to get complacent after a while, and I think I've done that too. Like again, going through a lot of coaching, I was pushing myself like to the very limit, right? But I did that for 6, 7 years in a row. And I was just like, okay, got to get this next milestone, got to sell more, got to do that. It's like, and you get to the point where you get burned out, and I think I did that as well, where it's like, okay, gosh, if I, yeah, I don't know if I got another year doing it this hard, right? So, business is works fine the way it is. It doesn't necessarily have to be bigger. And I kind of learned with my building business that it was like, actually we were more profitable the one year when we built a few less homes than the year where we built, a record number, because sometimes you're putting stress on every part of the business and every system. And sometimes more sales doesn't necessarily mean more profit. And I found that if we kind of limit the number of homes we build to a certain amount, we can actually be more profitable. Um, and so because you start, finding more mistakes that you can fix early on, or, you can just have everything in a certain way and under control. Whereas like you start doing too much, all the wheels start falling off everywhere, and else, and everybody's making little mistakes, and all those mistakes cost a few dollars here and a few dollars there, and they add up to huge dollars later. So, yeah, sometimes it's not bigger isn't always better.
You have a great way of sharing stories and bringing us in and along with us on the ride. So thank you so much for everything that you've shared today. And I know there's so much more we could talk about. Is there anything that you feel has been left unsaid for today?
No, not really. I think the only thing I would add on is just for anyone listening is, someone always told me that the your business only grows as much as you grow. So if you're not willing to grow and invest in yourself, then most likely your business isn't going to grow. So you have to constantly put a little bit of time aside for yourself and make sure that you're working on yourself just as much, and then try and pass it on to your team as well, and get them to buy into that and get them to work and focus on themselves as well. And that's how you can really get some exponential growth.
I have to ask, did you learn that in high school?
No, I learned that from my business coach, because I'll tell
Yes.
you, when I finished college, the last thing I want to do is read a book.
That's what I was thinking. Like, I don't remember hearing that. Did you learn
No,
that in your school?
no,
Because
they
I
don't
think
teach
I
that in
thought
school.
we were just going to learn to get good at a skill, and
Yep.
then that was going to be the end of it. That
Yeah,
was,
I learned that from my business coach, and again, like I said, when I was finished with college, there's probably about 7 years where I was like, I didn't want to pick up any kind of book and learn about anything. I just was like, I did all that. Now I'm gonna go do, and it's easy to do that, and you have to put time aside. And there's tons and tons of business books. I've learned more about business just being in business the first year than I ever did in college. And not to
yeah.
knock college, but that's just the way it is. Um,
Mhm.
you learn by doing, and there's so many smart people out there. So, find smart people, find things that you're interested in, learn about them, and you'll be better for it.
Thank you so much for your time today, David.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you for tuning in. And to stay in touch, email us at info@businessaddictspodcast.com.